Hey, it's Josh Goldstein here. I'm an immigration lawyer in Los Angeles. It's a Saturday. It's kind of a lazy day here. And I got a pretty urgent email from somebody, and I wanted to explain to you exactly what they're asking and what my answer is, because I think it might be interesting for a lot of people. In the video, the email, this is from a person, we're going to call him Mr. K. He says here, my wife and I have been married for 2 years. She lives with me here in the States, but she has a family member in the hospital in Canada. As we speak, she needs to leave the US and go see them. I've not started the immigration process. I'm deathly afraid that if she does leave and go to Canada, I'll never be able to see her again. Once she leaves the States, will she ever be allowed to re-enter the country? And so my email in exchange from that was, are you a US citizen? Are you seeking to get a green card based on marriage, which I assume was the case? What's her immigration status right now? In exchange, he said, I'm a US citizen. She and I got married, but I believe at that point she was past the allotted time allowed to stay in the US legally, and she's going to go back to Canada tomorrow to be with her family. And I want to make sure there's a chance to have her come back once she leaves. Boy, that is a tough situation. Let me try to unpack this. First of all, if you enter the U.S. with a visitor visa, if you're Canadian, you come in, you don't need a visa, you can visit the U.S. But then if you overstay the amount of time that you're supposed to be here, you accrue what's called unlawful presence. Okay, and if you apply for a green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen within the U.S., even if you're out of status, even if you've accrued unlawful presence, you can still get a green card through marriage without any need for a waiver or any complication or anything like that. You can still get a green card through marriage while you're here in the U.S. If you leave the U.S. and you depart from the U.S. after accruing unlawful presence, depending on how much unlawful presence you've accrued, you may need a waiver to get back to the U.S., an I-601 waiver. And so the normal process of getting a green card through marriage, if you're outside the U.S., involves a U.S. consulate abroad. It's going to take a year or so. It's going to take a really long time. You have a consular interview. But when you add a waiver onto that, you're going to add probably another year onto that. So even if you leave the U.S. and you've accrued unlawful presence sufficient that you need a waiver, then you're going to need to spend at least probably 2 years before you'll be able to re-enter the U.S. And then you would only be able to re-enter the U.S. if you can get a waiver approved. Now, this presupposes that the person has accrued a lot of unlawful presence and needs a waiver. Maybe she's only overstayed by a few weeks or a few days, and maybe she wouldn't need a waiver. But even if she doesn't need a waiver, it's going to be a full year before you get back. And adding on top of that, now we have lockdowns and quarantine and restrictions related to COVID-19, which is going to make international travel and air flights and consular appointments all the more difficult. So no matter what the circumstances is, the ability of someone to leave the U.S. and come back in this scenario is very, very dicey. And I understand that she has a family member who's sick, and my heart goes out to her in this situation. This is an agonizing decision. I certainly would be able to help you out with this scenario, but boy, this is a tough choice, and you have to be clear about what you're up against. I don't think it's clear. I don't think it's the person says he's afraid if she leaves, he'll never be able to see her again. Of course, he could travel to Canada to visit her, but I think what he's saying is she'll never be able to live in the U.S. And I think the road back to the U.S. is going to be a challenging one in this scenario. By contrast, if she were to stay in the U.S. and apply for a green card through marriage in the U.S., you would not need a waiver, and it would be relatively straightforward, or could be relatively straightforward. And keep in mind also that when you apply for a green card through marriage, you can also apply for advanced parole. That gives you permission to travel internationally while the case is pending. Now, this could take several months at least to get advanced parole, but it's something to keep in mind as an option. If you have more questions or need help, put them in the comments below or reach out to me. I'm here for you, and we'll do everything I can to help you out. Thanks so much, and good luck. Take care.